Assalamu alaikum everyone. The topic of my today's video is mastering descriptive writing. Welcome to the part 1 of the descriptive writing video. We are going to talk about writing tips in this, whereas the part 2 is going to deal with the structure of descriptive writing. Now, the very first thing, what is descriptive writing? Many of you might have a clear idea about the writing tips, but many of you may not have any idea about the structure of descriptive writing. The very first, by the way, the video is going to deal with the tips of descriptive writing. I'm going to dilate them in detail. It may further clarify your concept. Let's look at the definition first. The descriptive essay is a genre of essay that asks the candidate to describe something. It can be an object, a person, place, experience, emotion, situation, etc. This genre encourages the writer to paint an image that is vivid and moving in the mind of the reader. It is very important to note that the image should be vivid and moving. It should be realistic. Why? Because remember, descriptive essays are subject to one's imagination or how a person experiences something or perceives something. This is the reason that description is directly related to forming a mental picture. For example, your mental image of a dress on display can be very different from mine. It can depend upon the gender, it can depend upon the age. This is the reason that the examiners stress upon using words that create effective mental picture. I will give you an example of a city which can be described as exciting or scary depending upon not only carefully chosen words but from a subtly crafted mood. It means it is subject to your imagination, your perception of something. Now, before moving any further, we have to establish that there is a clear difference between narrative and descriptive writing. By the way, narrative can't be written without descriptive writing, whereas description can be written without narration. I will give you an example. If you want to describe an object, you can simply do that. But if you want to narrate a story about that object, you have to have some descriptive element of that object within the narrative piece. So we are going to discuss the difference in terms of through three things: purpose, structure, and tense. Purpose is describing a person, place, object, or event. This is the same as definition. Using sensory details, sight, sound, smell, taste, touch to create a strong impression. Whereas in a narrative essay, telling a story often with a clear beginning, middle, and end, and including characters and a plot and a conflict. By the way, if you want to tell a story about an object, you need a plot and you need a conflict. If you simply want to describe that object, you do not need any conflict. You can simply describe it. So for example, if you are describing from a first person point of view, you can do it without a conflict. That is description. But when conflict comes into play, it will change the entire essay into a narration. Structure of descriptive essay. It is often organized spatially. I'm going to, by the way, dilate it in the second video. For example, from near to far, top to bottom, or by focusing on sensory details, or topical organization may come in handy. Whereas narrative essay typically follows a chronological order. If you want to go for a flashback technique, you may do that. But both the techniques will be written with an introduction, rising action, climax, falling action, and resolution. And you cannot write a narrative essay without this 5 paragraph structure. A descriptive essay is mostly written in present tense, whereas the narrative essay is usually written in past tense. Now, I urge you to create 2 descriptive paragraphs, one in past and one in present, and look at the difference, how effective it appears in the present tense. Now, just to make the things easier for you, I have written the paragraphs for you. In present tense, it says sunlight spills through tall windows, painting gold on the floor. Meanwhile, the air smells of pencils and chalk. In front, desks wait in neat rows, while walls bloom with bright posters. Above, a fan hums and pages rustle. Soft applause. Altogether, the room breathes with quiet curiosity like a garden before flowers bloom. If you look at it, this is a very vivid, beautiful picture which creates a mental image of a serene, peaceful classroom. If we change the same into the past tense, sunlight spilled through tall windows, painting gold on the floor. Meanwhile, the air smelled of pencils and chalk. In front desk waited in neat rows, while walls bloomed with bright posters. Above, a fan hummed and pages rustled. Soft applause. Altogether, the room breathed with quiet curiosity, like a garden before flowers bloomed. If you look at it, the first paragraph creates a direct picture in the mind of the reader, where the second paragraph appears to be a part of the story and creates an element of suspense that the desk is waiting and the pages are rustling, although the same thing is over here, but present in the present tense it appears to be more descriptive, whereas over here it appears to be a bit narrative. Now, tips for writing descriptive essay. There are three elements which we are going to consider: sensory details, figurative language, and descriptive words. Let's start with the sensory details. I've told you that the description is subject to one's imagination, to one's emotion, and one's thoughts and feeling. A writer paints a picture in the mind of the reader through the senses of sight, hearing, smell, taste, and touch, as well as through emotional feelings. Remember, we perceive the world around us through these five senses. I'm going to show you the five senses one by one, and I'm going to give you an example. Smells that are in the air, the aroma of freshly brewed coffee. Nowadays, I specifically like to buy tube roses. Why? Because they smell very nice. If even if the lights are turned off and I enter into the room, the fresh aroma of the tube roses brings a beautiful mental image of flowers in my mind. So this is the reason I buy them. Then comes the sound, traffic, honking horns, sight. The sun scattered tiny diamonds across dew covered grass as it peeked out from beyond the horizon. By the way, in the classroom, when I give any descriptive essay, most of your essays are predominated by the sense of sight rather than with all five senses. If you have only sight in that, that will not convey a mental image for me. You have to use all the five senses in order to create a mental image. Touch. The texture of adobe heart's walls resembled coarse sandpaper. And finally, the taste. Sweet, sour, salty, bitter, tart. Giant goosebumps formed on my tongue when I accidentally bit into a silver of lemon. Now, I will give you an example of a restaurant. Whenever you go to a restaurant, you offer food. It is not only the sight, but also smell, taste, touch, everything which comes into play to form a mental image. For example, if you go to a Chinese restaurant and the food is served in a sizzling dish, the sound of the sizzling sauce will attract you. The aroma, obviously, of, for example, of the fried chicken or chicken with chili dry or something of the like, with which will be coupled with the bright chilies or with the bell peppers or other vegetables, is going to attract your sight, and of course you have already smelled it and heard it. And then when you bite, by the way, take the first bite, and if the chicken melts into your mouth, you love the experience. And why? Because it's a touch which makes you feel happy. If the chicken would have been chewy, that you would not like the texture of it. And lastly comes the taste. You can love the sweet, tangy, by the way, or sweet tangy sauce, or it can be salty. It's totally up to you how you create a mental image, how the image creates a ripple in your mind. Because if you are unable to create the same ripple in the mind of the reader, you will not be able to do justice to your writing. Now, I'm going to show you a few sentences to help you further in this. Sentence one says that ice cream was very cold. If you look at this is quite vague. Whereas if the second sentence is, the green minty ice cream was so cold, I felt a stabbing pain behind my right eye. Okay, the second sentence, why is it vivid? Because it does a much better job of engaging the reader's senses. The reader might almost be able to taste and smell the mint ice cream or feel an excruciating brain freeze. This is something which we experience a lot when we drink or taste something very cold. So it helps the reader to relate to what the character is going through. In other words, it creates a mental image in the mind of the in the mind of the reader. Now I'm going to explain you another sentence. My dog was scared of the storm. It is very vague because you don't know which dog, you are not what kind of scare was it, what was the storm. If the next sentence says, my 120-pound Rottweiler trembled anxiously in the corner as a storm struck. Now 120-pound Rottweiler. If you are a dog lover and you like pedigree dogs, and you can imagine that it's a huge dog, and a huge dog like Rottweiler covering in a corner, trembling anxiously, because if you have explained scared, you have explained the dog, but you did not explain the storm. Was it a hailstorm? Was it a sandstorm? So, in other words, if you are able to describe everything, if you are able to explain everything through words the way you are feeling, it will create a emotional or a mental picture which is pulsating with emotions in the mind of the reader. So this is very important, that your description should carry the emotional value at the same time, something which you feel like brain freeze or trembling anxiously in the corner. Then comes the figurative language. This is the second writing tip. Figures of speech are imaginative comparisons between two basically dissimilar things. A figure of speech may enliven a description by making the essay more visual or forceful. Here are some of the more common figures of speech. I'll show you that simile, very simple, comparing two things with the help of like and as. You know the examples. Then comes a metaphor. It is without the use of like and as, and you are again implying the comparison. For example, if I say she has rosy cheeks, this is a metaphor. She has cheeks like rose, this is a simile. Then we have personification, giving human characteristics to inanimate objects. You can recall my first, by the way, description which I gave you about the classroom, where the entire description came to life because of personification. So this was a very important thing, where you can go back in my video and then you can see how personification was used in that. Then we have hyperbole, a very, very important technique. Hyperbole actually helps the reader to understand that this thing is very important to you when you exaggerate something. It can be a person or it can be an object, but your exaggeration, which, because the writer can and a reader can understand the bias in the language. So when he understands that there is exaggeration, the person also understands the emotional value of that to you at the same time. Then we have sound words or onomatopoeia, using words that imitate the sound associated with the object. Since figurative language helps to, by the way, improve the comprehension of the reader at the same time. Why am I saying comprehension? Because in paper one, there is a huge part which deals with the analysis of a passage, and there, if you don't know your figurative language, if you don't know sensory details, you will be unable to understand the bias in the language, you will be unable to understand or comprehend how the emotion is developed or what effect is it creating. So it is very important to understand figurative language and sensory detail, because if you learn how to write it down, it will be more comprehensible for you later on. Then we have juxtapositioning. It is a very, very important technique. It is the placement of two things, often contrasting closely together to emphasize their difference. I love this example, by the way. This is taken from A Tale of Two Cities by Charles Dickens. The opening line say it was the best of time, it was the worst of time. It means time was there, but it was both good and bad for the person. It's a beautiful, by the way, presentation through figurative language. It expresses the meaning more vividly. It makes the writing more easier and more relatable for the reader. The idea behind using figurative language is to describe something as accurately as possible and to create an image. I will show you two descriptive paragraphs. One has only 5 sentences in that, but other has 5 sentences paired with figurative language, and you will see how effective it becomes when you pair it with figurative language. I'll read the paragraph to you. Sunlight dances on red roses. Soft grass brushes bare feet. Sweet strawberries melt on the tongue. Bees hum gently among blossoms. Lavender fills the air with calming scent, while fresh earth smells rich after rain. A breeze stirs leaves. Uh, carrying the promise of spring. Beautiful description. Five senses are there: sunlight, dancing, image of sight, then soft brushing bare feet, image of touch. Sweet strawberries melt, this is taste. And then lavender fills the air with, this is smell. And then finally the breeze stirs leaves, carrying the promise of leaves, this is the sense of hearing. Then how when the same by the way description is coupled, paired with figurative language, how vivid it becomes. Because figurative language, remember, is something that we use it, by the way, figurative language for the same reason in our everyday conversation that a writer does. Why? Because it conveys the idea more clearly, colorful, it makes it more colorful and forceful. Okay, let's look at it. The garden is a crown with roses like red jewels. Grass tickles toes as if it is saying hello. This is, what is it? It is the sense of touch. What was it? This was the sense of sight. Strawberries pop like tiny fireworks in the mouth. Bees hum buzz buzz around the flowers. Lavender sings softly, and the earth, fresh from the rain, smells like a warm, gentle hug. Excellent description, by the way. And when sensory detail is coupled with figurative language, it creates a vivid image in the mind of the reader. Now, the last but not the least, a very, very important technique is the use of adjectives. I must say, do not use vague term or generalities like good, nice, bad, or beautiful. Be specific and use sensory terms. For example, I ate a good dinner, not good enough. I devoured a steaming hot cheese-filled pepperoni pizza for dinner. That makes a difference. For example, if I say that this girl is beautiful, what is the image am I creating in your mind? No, I'm not creating any image in your mind. If I say that she is that the girl has rosy cheeks and blonde hair, I'm more specific and I'm bringing a image in your mind. So I would say show, don't tell. Notice that sentences that tell tend to be direct. They are objective. It means they're not subject to your imagination. Sentences that tell record verifiable facts as scientists or journalists might. Sentences that show are subjective. They may be influenced in part by the writer's personal experiences. Sentences that show create mental images. Very important, G. I'm going to show you a sentence which tell the classroom was messy. It does not explain anything. But if I say crumpled worksheets lay scattered like fallen leaves and half empty water bottles stood guard on dusty desks while a lonely pencil rolled slowly across the floor. What is it? This is an excellent description, by the way. Use of personification is there. And sorry, this is a metaphor, simile. Sorry. Okay. And then you have a lonely pencil is the personification. Excellent. Stood on guard is also a personification. It's a beautiful description, by the way. Figurative language, when it comes into play, coupled with the sensory detailing, it creates a beautiful picture in the mind of the reader. Finally, again, G, just to recall tips of writing descriptive essays, you have to have the sensory detail. You must write figurative language, and descriptive words are a must. But remember, description is subject to one's imagination. It means whatever you're feeling about something, you must describe it in the same manner. Thank you. I hope that you have enjoyed this video. Allah Hafiz.